is calling.
Hey guys, so I thought I've been really enjoying doing a lot of podcasts lately, and one of the things that I think I've really enjoyed or I really wanted to do is obviously, I say obviously, like for no reason, so many times. One of the things I've wanted to do is I wanted to do more content where kind of I get to share a longer standing opinion of maybe why I will give suggestions, especially now that I'm working on another episode of Videographer's Guide to the Convention. I thought this podcast could be a really good way for me to kind of extend that series a bit. So I would love to. So I'm going to talk way more about opinions I've formed about, especially things like conventions and event videography. Kind of getting into videography and kind of being able to just expand a little farther in some of the things that inevitably we'll begin to talk about more in episodes of Videographer's Guide to the Convention. And then therefore I will not have to talk as much on those videos, because if you really want to find out more, then you can come to these videos and learn a little bit more. So today we're essentially going to do kind of an expanded version of the first episode where I talked about kind of the starting camera equipment. And there are a few routes we're going to be able to go, but one of the things that I honestly really wanted to talk about was certain feelings I had about Micro Four Thirds when I made that video back during Con Alt Delete and where it is now. It's kind of weirdly changed. It's weird. I would say it's worse, but now that I've really thought about it for a good while, as I've been trying to debate on whether or not me currently having my GH5 is good for a long haul, I have definitely come to a conclusion that I would rather that the Micro Four Thirds mount is in a very unique position. So let's kind of re-go over some of the things I think I talked about in that beginning episode. So obviously one of the big things that I talked about in that episode was the factor of which camera system do you kind of want to be a part of? Because a big thing that I have definitely realized in some ways is that you really want to grow with your glass. And by glass, I mean your lenses. You don't want to constantly be switching all of these systems around, and then suddenly, you are always needing to get new lenses, and that's a lot of money to throw in. Like when you're like, part of the experiment we're going to go through today in this episode is we're going to learn about how much you spend inevitably can go to lenses, and like you will lose to trying to get good lenses. And obviously it's really good to get nice lenses for yourself, because they're going to do way better. In the end, they're going to do way better than whatever the kit lenses that come with certain cameras are going to be. But there is by far a lot of money that can go into that. For a strong example, so I've got two lenses here. I'm going to pull the other one out. So I've got these two lenses right here. Now, when these were at the time of when I bought these, right, so this is the Sigma 18-35 EF mount lens. There's no Micro Four Thirds mount lens for this. And then I imagine inevitably, I wouldn't be surprised if this potentially goes into L mount, but maybe. That's a maybe. But then this is the Panasonic Lumix GX 12-35. Now, if you'll recall from my video about the VGC video, I talk about crop factor. Micro Four Thirds has a 2x crop factor, so this lens on the Panasonic is a 12-35, but this is an EF mount, which means it's for a Canon camera. But with a speed booster, this 18-35 becomes roughly about like 24-50 is kind of what I've called it. It's a little tough to get the exact math on how every speed booster uses. I use the Viltrox EF-M2 Mark 1. The Mark II is a better option if you are currently in the speed booster market, especially because things like the Metabone speed boosters I'll talk more about speed boosters later. Probably not in this episode because we're not going to necessarily worry about them too much. But if you are in the speed booster market, the Viltrox EF-M2 Mark II is a pretty solid choice. barring some probable camera or lens compatibility issues that I've noticed a number of times. But I might soon experiment with that more now that there have been more firmware updates and whatnot since the last time I've updated it. Like I have so we'll kind of, I'll maybe do some experiments in the future. So that's a future video. But these two lenses. All right. So when this lens was newer, and this was much closer, I bought this lens for closer to that $700 price point, which is around what you can get this lens for. However, I would argue that this lens is much better than this lens. It is not just because it's bigger, like size isn't everything. The reason is because of just the higher aperture. That's what's really nice about it, and it's super sharp. But this lens, despite that it's a 2.8, it is nowhere near any worse than the Sigma is in terms of like just pure performance, because what this does have is it has image stabilization built into the lens. When I'm shaking it to gesture, I can feel parts moving in there because of the image stabilization inside of the lens. It's nice and light. Like, what's one thing that this thing sucks for? It's like all metal, and therefore it's super heavy. That is me thudding it onto my desk. By the way, if you're wondering why I'm recording this podcast onto a webcam, I'm just kind of in a flux of trying to get stuff set up, trying to find good ways to figure out how to record things like this. So for right now, I'm just kind of using the webcam just to make the video so that I'm just making the video, which is a theme we'll get to in a minute. What's really nice about this lens, like I said, is that it's small. Micro Four Thirds and Panasonic lenses and Olympus lenses specifically are nice and compact. So there's a huge benefit to a lot of those things. Like you get almost the amount of close performance, but a lighter form factor, which can be good and bad depending on what you're doing. So for things like gimbals and stabilizers, these are really nice. For handheld, this is way better, because having a heavier camera for handheld is a better camera, which is what we'll kind of be getting into the next episode of Videographer's Guide to the Convention. So make sure you subscribe so you can see that one. That's going to be really fun. But what I wanted to talk about today, like I said, is kind of the continuation of what you should look at when you're getting your first camera. Because one of the first things I had thought of was like, hey, get a G7. Like essentially my big takeaway, my bias point on that video was like, get a G7 and then you can get a GH5 and you can stay in Micro Four Thirds. But since that video has come out, Panasonic has come up with their S1 lineup. They really have not made it seem like they intend to continue their Micro Four Thirds support, despite that they helped create it in the first place. However, there's also been rumors supposedly that there may be, in fact, a GH6 coming up at some point, which would be really awesome to see, because there's a lot of things that could really be benefited by something like a GH6. So I am really looking forward to potentially seeing some news about that, because my feelings about the Micro Four Thirds have been somewhat renewed in terms of, I guess, what I like about it, which is what we're going to get into now. So right here, I'm going to have to move that. Right here, I've got a little list, right? So this is my mock convention starter kit, and I'm going to talk about each parts into this. So right now, this is with the GH7, or the G7, not GH7. But one of the things, by the way, I don't live in this Lonadell. I don't know where this is. I typed in a random set of numbers because B&H, trying to dox me out here. So I just typed in a random set of a zip code, and I don't know where this is. I have no idea what that is. But let's go to other examples that have recently released since my Videographer's Guide to the Convention video, though those camera recommendations could still reign true today. For example, the Canon SL2, but for example, since then, for starter camera, the Sony 6100 has come out. It's a little bit more pricey. You're getting a little more to that $700, and that's what this EDU special for that matter. This one here, I need to find one that's not education special. Do I have? You're not helping me, B&H. Amazon sometimes can be a better option because of things like this, for sure. Let's see. So yeah, you've got so close to about $800 ish. That's a lot for a camera still. That's no small those are no small cookies. And then, recently they released the A6400, which is closer to $1,000, which I would argue for $1,000 camera, you're getting a good amount of bang for the buck, because especially with the E-mount, this can be then upgraded to a whole list of levels. Like you can get so much E-mount glass. There's crazy amount of lenses for the E-mount that Sony has been able to make over the years by just being in the mirrorless space for so long. And all of these E-mount lenses then can be put onto things like their FS cameras, like their cinema cameras, if you inevitably move up to that realm. There are so many ways, because one of the things I really like to talk about is how convention videography can be your gateway of going into like true videography, like true cinematography, like that. This doesn't just have to be a YouTube thing. And so for this Mock Con starter kit, one of the things that I kind of wanted to talk about with it is how this is a little bit more of like, if you just kind of wanted to be the YouTuber, and just you kind of want to do vlogging, the YouTube motif, and just do like cosplay music videos in a really fun way. So not really worrying about, like, you can always improve, but not really worrying about like immediately going professional, or really trying to go like full on professional, like, where you're going to try to do commercial video, maybe like a full on documentary, stuff like that. Maybe you'll eventually get there, but maybe that's after like you kind of, get a little more traction on YouTube, maybe so or not. But this is a great way. I think this is a great kit potentially just to have some fun for, say you get this is kind of, say you get that nice tax refund, you get $1,000 tax refund. That was one of the big first tax refunds that I got was around that. So this is something, when I was an adult and working like more adult-ish hours, could be a good, but I was while still living at home at the time, because this was like when I was 19. So one of the first things that I got was, a really solid tax return. And I used that to actually build my first computer, but you could use it to buy your first camera kit, especially one that isn't going to be super hard. So let's talk about the G7. Why did I put the G7 here? Well, my biggest reason, honestly, is because it doesn't have terrible autofocus. A lot of people say that it's pretty bad, but over the years, it has gotten okay, right? It's definitely not dual pixel autofocus from Canon. It's not Sony autofocus. Those two autofocus systems are Fujifilm. Panasonic is the only company to still use the worst system for autofocusing, but they put in the best features for video. So the things that this has that I think will really start teaching you how to do video really well is that right now in this camera, you can utilize, while this one I don't believe has any image stabilization, which is a downgrade, which is somewhat of a downside. Let's see, I don't believe it does. Exposure control. Yep, no, I don't see anything about image stabilization, which again is a little bit of a downer. It is a 30-minute, recording window. So if you want to do things like podcasts, you're gonna have to make sure they're pretty short. But something like these are really, really useful. Is you cannot take away this price. Right now it's saying these holiday savings, so maybe a number of these are subject to change. For example, there's this Panasonic kit here, or this G7 kit with 2 lenses for $497. For where are you? Whoops, sorry. Where have we gone? All right, there we are. For potentially, what is this? Yeah, $50 more. You're getting 2 lenses, but I'm going to talk about maybe why you shouldn't get something like this. And that's, and you're still getting, a small bag to get you started, a SD card to get you started. 32 gigabytes isn't maybe the greatest amount, but these golds are really nice. And just get SanDisk cards. Like, honestly, the Sony ones aren't bad, to be honest. You could get the Sony ones, but they tend to be a little bit more expensive than SanDisk SD cards. And they've never failed me, and they've definitely failed other people. The downside to this one, though, is it's SDHC. So that's kind of why sometimes these kits are really not useful, and that's kind of the next point. Getting an off-end battery as like your secondary battery is not really a bad idea, because when you're trying to save money, because like spending what I think they can be like $60 for an extra battery is insane sometimes. So honestly, just having an off-brand secondary can generally sometimes be just as fine. It inevitably will just be your second battery. Like I have my 2-second battery are from a brand called Wasabi Power. And it works just fine, so you can definitely utilize that. I would recommend getting a nicer SD card. You can get an SDXC SD card. Let's do, SanDisk SDXC. Like, let's just search that, right? And you're going to find, like, look at this. This is a 170 megabits per second, 64 gig SD card for $18.57. Like, this is a no-brainer. You should get this. It'll be much better than using your HC. These HCs just they don't go to higher cameras eventually, and they just aren't as fast. I would just recommend spending some extra $20 and maybe getting this. But in reality, for what you're just getting started, what you're just paying for with that extra amount, and potentially we could just throw this into there. So we could put this into the like MockCon starter kit. In fact, here we'll put this in my other secret kit there that we'll get to in a minute. So right now, so say our budget is $1,000 flat. We're under budget, and yet we are getting, we got a camera kit, an extra battery. Now we have 2 SD cards, but we'll probably just stick with using this one for the most part. Just maybe use this one as a backup. And then one of the big things as well is something that can do audio for you. Now, it depends on what you want to do. If you're trying to start up like podcasts like stuff, then get something like this Behringer XM 8500. This is like a $20 microphone. The kit, if you get it with I've got a wish list here actually that we can go look at. We'll take you'll probably see some of my other lists here. That's fine. These are just things I play around with to kind of figure out potential things that I would do more in the later stages of things. But for $40, you can get this microphone. It has this nice pop filter, essentially wind filter. It will it'll greater nullify your P's and B's. And then, you get a nice long XLR cable with it. It's quite long, and it'll serve you for a long time. These are nice cable that I actually have bought the cable brand that this came with on my own, and it works really well. They're a great brand. So this is a very quality kit. And then they're just getting a simple USB audio interface, not to provide phantom power because these dynamic mics don't need that, but just to give you a little bit more control so that you can dial in. I use an audio board, like a full-on mixer for 2 XLR inputs, but these are just as serviceable for much less. You just don't get the same amount of tools between that and this. Like, I don't have to do much in terms of editing my voice because I can do it on the mixer. Whereas this, you do a little bit more in terms of any Audacity, which is a free audio program. But hey, you've got something, right? You're getting going for less than $80 or just around $80. Like, that's a crazy amount of money to be able to do really high quality audio for really not that much. So like, this is something that definitely should be looked at. But in terms of the con starter kit, something like this Rode Video Micro is really nice. The main reason I suggest the Micro versus something like the Video Mic Go is just because you're getting about the same amount of quality, the same amount of audio interface and like abilities, but for much more, for like $50 more, or I think it's actually more like $20. For $20 more, it's just not worth it. This is really light. This thing's really light. It's serviceable, right? This is just serviceable. And that's what we're really looking for right now. Because then otherwise you can look at things like, a Rode Video Mic Pro, the Deity Pro, the D3s are also great options for, especially the D3, I think is maybe about $40, $50 more. And then you're getting a way better mic than this, and potentially even the Rode Video Mic, regular Pro, not the Pro Plus. And because I have a Rode Video Mic, which is their just video mic. It's like their highest end with the red stand before any of the Pro line, and it's one of those things where it's like, if you would get that, it would just be better to get the Rode Video Mic Pro non Plus. But the other thing then we're getting here is we're getting a light, and this is something that's really important, even in the convention space, because that's one of the things, right? Like light is so important, because like I could block the light from, I could try to turn off a bunch of these lights. Like I just turned off one light, and immediately, the webcam is trying to compensate with gain, because especially this screen is pretty white. Now that I've minimized the window, now, you're getting, there's less white coming from the monitor, but now we're also getting, cause it's, it's white on a monitor. It's going to be pretty cool, but I'm still like, the shadows here are all there. You can barely see that side of my face. It just doesn't look that good. I'll bring the window back up and turn that light back on just to give it see, and already it looks better. And this is just even with lighting that isn't, I would say, like correct lighting, but you can think of this then in a convention space where there may be barely any or enough, and especially because this is bicolor. This is a bicolor light for $30. You'll have to get the batteries with it, but the NPF batteries can be pretty affordable. Amazon, you can get higher capacity batteries for about this same price. You can get like 2 high capacity NPF batteries on Amazon for this same price. Yeah, are they not Sony? Are they potentially like, Newer, which is a light company anyway? So I would relatively trust the Newer batteries, although we'll see really as I get newer batteries coming in here. But you can get, obviously there'll be off-brand, and you'll be able to see how well they do a charge, how well they, how quickly they can charge. You're getting what you can get. But for $40, like, and essentially for close to $70, you are getting light and batteries and a light that is pretty decently bright. Like this Viltrox light, you can look up a number of reviews online. Like it is, I have friends who have used it, so that's how I know that's how personally I can also verify for it. I don't own this one, but I have friends who own it, and I have used it on their shoots with them. And this is a very serviceable light, especially in a convention space where you just want to maybe get some extra light. It's not too harsh. Where is my light here? Oh no, I don't know where my light is. I have a little small on-camera light around here. Oh, it's on the ground. This one right here. So what's nice about this Viltrox one compared to one like this, I didn't go back, sorry. You haven't been looking at the screen. But this Viltrox light here, I'll show you the batteries in a moment, is different in this because you see how you can see all the LEDs here, right? You can see every LED. Now, I'm going to blind you for a moment here, but like look at this, right? But now like, obviously if I point this at me, I'm getting a lot of light. It's pretty harsh. But you can see kind of how bright, just even like, at an arm's reach away, this can make. Like, I'll put it away, put it at, bring it to me. Let's go to my darker side here. So let's find a good point here. Oh, I'm on the low setting. There we go. All right, let's point it at me. Point it away. Point it at me. Point it away. Point it at me. Point it away. And I think the batteries are actually dying. This generally does get brighter. I think the batteries are low on this. So it's slightly not the perfect example, but just having any light can be useful. I recommend this one though over this because this is one color. While it does get decently bright, I would argue having the bicolor utilization is way more useful for professional work or professional look of the video and to make it potentially look more cinematic. So there's and like if you have a friend, they can hold the light, stuff like that. It's really useful. So you can work this in with these batteries. $70 lighting, you got it, right? Like it's much better. And even in a con setting, you should try to get a tripod. This one I have heard about. So and it is serviceable. It's not the sturdiest tripod on the planet. You could front up a little bit more for a better tripod, but it is something that is an option. Now, one thing that will kind of contradict some of the statements in the past, but if you really want some type of stabilization, for the relative cheap, I would recommend getting a cheaper stabilization that are like this, where they have these little handles and these weights on the bottom. There are some you'll see where they look like they're like kind of C-shaped. They're not that great. I wouldn't recommend getting those, honestly. But getting these ones that are look like glide cams but aren't glide cams, this is something that I think will really help you out if you're looking for a little bit more action in what you're doing, especially when vlogging around, because this thing doesn't have image stabilization. So to give you that, otherwise you could always get you could get a mini tripod for vlogging if you really want to do that, and that can sometimes help you with your stabilization as well, because just not having your hands on the camera, having just an extra grip, or just even having the extra grip of being able to move your hands and something that isn't just the camera, giving it a little more stabilization when you're moving, will help you no matter what. This says 2. Okay, but they didn't affect the price. Interesting. Okay, well, anyway. And then finally, we're getting the glass. This is a lens I own. Pull it up here. I have used this lens a number of times, especially in conventions, especially when I've especially used this lens with photography. This has been my go-to for street photography and a lot of shoots where I just want that standard look, because with the 2x crop, this is going to be 50 millimeters. So this is kind of the Micro Four Thirds nifty 50 lens. That's pretty much exactly what this lens is. It's really small. We'll compare it here. Here, I'll switch views. So this is it compared to the 12 to 35, and then here's it compared to the 16 to 35. That is quite a difference, and it's quite of a weight difference too. This thing is light. I could just chuck this across the room and it'd probably go pretty dang far. I'm not going to do that. I like this lens. I don't want it to break, but this is a great lens to use. I honestly recommend it wholeheartedly. Though, if you do have a little bit, if you're not, maybe don't want to worry about the stabilizer, or you don't, you decide to maybe chimp out or get out on the video micro because you're not going to really vlog. Because you get the micro if you plan to vlog. If you don't plan to vlog, then don't get it. That's the way I'm gonna say it. Get it later when you decide to vlog. The micro should probably be one of the later things you get if you're planning on vlogging. If you just want to make music videos and like no interviews and stuff like that, essentially just the music videos, then don't worry about it right away. Maybe you can get that a little bit later, because your audio is going to come from, your no copyright sounds track that everybody gets. Yes, I am on to every one of you cosplay music video creators. Stop going to that website. There are other ones around. Everybody goes to that YouTube channel. There are so many other options out there. Be different. But anyway, small rant. Sorry, tangential rant. So I would honestly, this lens is amazing. That is for Natural One. You can check out that down below. This lens, for the price, you can't beat its performance. It's so sharp. It gets a good amount of bokeh or out of focus elements in the look of it. It definitely is worth the price, and it's a great value. And that's something that I think that I kind of am getting into. It's whether or not you should get something because it's cheap or because it gives you a good value. So this is where some things are going to potentially deviate slightly. Because now I'm going to move over to a similar spec thing. It won't have the same amount of stuff here, but to me, it's something that it's going to involve things that give you a good value, because that's the thing. I think the two things you'll see a lot of times in camera reviews and whatnot is I think you constantly see people who are either promoting the same brands all the time. So you'll notice, this isn't a Manfrotto tripod, despite that I do own one, but that's because it's a little nicer. I'm not only going to Canon or Sony here, because to me the value of having something like being able to learn how to work with Vlog is much better than having image stabilization or dual pixel autofocus. Learning to manual focus, despite that other manual autofocus systems are better for doing things like this. moving from here into the front of the camera, being able to have that autofocus is, no matter what, going to be better. But also at the same time, they are, they don't have things that the Panasonic does, which is, for a great example, this has not a lot of cameras. Frick, okay, I was gonna say I need more views, or like views of this camera. I need more views anyway, but that's a different point. Let's see, where is this side view? Let's find. No, I don't want customer images. Dang it! Can I? Nope. Where's this 360 view? 360. Here it is. Oh, it's up here. All right, here. Let's zoom in here. Let's zoom and enhance. So we have this mic input, right? That's really nice. Being able to have a mic input. You get an HDMI output. Like, not a lot of cameras have these. You're gonna get a lot of nice stuff. You're being able to, you can inevitably get a cam link and you can put this in as your webcam. Like, this will have life after, you maybe decide to upgrade it to a different camera system or something like that. Let's see. I don't think so. The memory card is in the bottom there. Let's see. So sadly, there is no headphone jack with this. The Sony A6100, I believe, will. So this is where that's kind of the only place this one fails, is having a headphone jack. But now let's go to my other list that I was referring to. So this is if you really just want to start with video. Oh, dang it. Can I refresh this? Okay. I have to blur that out for a moment. This is the set that I would say you should get if you. Now this is a little over 1,000. This is a little more than 11. This is close to 1,100. But this is a better value proposition, right? So these are things. Everything that I've put in this list are great values, because they're going to, while they are not the most expensive brands out there, they will get the job done and they will be useful for you for a long time. So we've still got the G7 here. I would potentially argue potentially argue here that the A6100 is not a bad idea to put here. Like, if we want this just to be a pure value proposition build, right? I would argue then, sure. If we went to, let's get to the mirrorless cameras here, because I want to get to mirrorless system. All right. So let's get to APS-C and 4/3. Let's just do this right now. So Nikon recently came out with the Z50, which is a great option. Actually, does the Canon SL2? Whoops! I almost flung my lens off the desk here. Does the SL2 have a headphone jack? Because this inevitably then will raise a solid point. So let's check here. Let's check the 360 view when it loads. Well, bam! All right, so you get a microphone jack. HDMI, USB. That's going to be micro B for sure. So it doesn't look like you get a headphone jack either, which is kind of okay. You do get NFC, which is actually an understated feature. It's something that actually you would be surprised how much it doesn't exist. But NFC is really useful for connecting to Bluetooth and apps and whatnot, which most of these cameras will also have. So let's see here. So now we've got the A6000. So this is a similar kit, but this is a little bit above. But the A6000, I believe, also does not have a headphone jack, because unfortunately there's no Bluetooth audio yet, unlike our phones. So we do want to have a headphone jack, unlike most smartphones nowadays. So let's see, the M50. So the M50 is a great value proposition as well, if it also has a headphone jack. This is the one part that I think I forgot to check, which was where is any potential, or do things have headphone jacks and where? But I think we might be getting pretty SOL outside of the Sony A6400. I think that's about the lowest you're getting in terms of, but the A6300 now might actually be cheaper. So let's go. I'm going to hit the A6400 there, but now I'm going to search for the A6300, and we're going to look at whether or not that this may be much cheaper this potentially has gotten. And it's still more expensive. That's very interesting, because I would argue the A6400 is by far the better camera. So save your money. Get the A6400. That's my words of wisdom. Yeah, let's see. But now, to be fair, that one was with a lens. But this kit, there is this kit which is just at $1,000. But I would argue, yes, again, like this. So you're getting closer to that $1,000 for a camera. But honestly, $1,000 for a camera isn't too bad, especially because there's the used market. Always remember the used market. My first camera was, in fact, I bought it used, and that was the T3i. So it looks like this one does not also have a headphone jack. I am getting squashed on the headphone jack. It's like looking at cell phones. All right, so then arguably at that point, based on what I have now currently learned, this thing's value proposition has gone through the roof. The G7's value proposition has gone through the roof to me, because while things like dual pixel autofocus are really useful, while things like internal stabilization that the A6400 has are really useful, the number one thing is that you are always, what's going to benefit you no matter what, is that you are getting a camera that will be able to support a number of lenses. So remember when I talked about this and how you can get the Viltrox speed booster? You get a Viltrox speed booster for $200. This lens, which is a crazy value lens, like the Sigma to 18 to 35 is one of the most recommended lenses for pretty much every single young filmmaker or filmmaker that is getting started, and it is just because of how good this lens looks and how versatile it is, because it's a zoom lens, right? But it doesn't move. Look at how this one, when I try to zoom in, it moves, right? This changes the weight of the camera. Suddenly the lens goes from I can kind of, it's still obviously relatively we'll say it's balanced about here, right? But now let's quickly zoom it out, and suddenly it has begun to tip. And obviously you can only take that example for what it's worth. I could be faking it for you, but the reality is, why would I do that? There's no purpose for it. It's just, this lens is a great value proposition. It's less than the newest version of this lens new, and you can get these used as well. There are people that sell these for some reason. I don't know why. But you can get this a little cheaper as well, which is always what's nice. Getting lenses used is also something that is slightly underrated. A lot of people get a little concerned because they think it might be broken, but because of things like eBay's buyer protection policies, no matter what, as long as the lens will work, it will look good. As long as the lens will, you can see the pictures, but as long as you get it, if you get it and the glass is broken, eBay will be able to help you out. I have used actually their buyer protection kind of needs before, when I bought a pair of headphones that were non-returnable, and then they turned out, and then when I got them, the cord was broken. It actually didn't go into the socket all the way, which was really, really dumb. So I was able to return them and I just got a different pair from somebody else, and that one was fine. Those were an older pair and whatnot, but that's the thing, is eBay's buyer protection can very much help you. It hasn't helped everybody every time, it's not perfect, but it definitely can help you. So now going back to this list in terms of the value proposition, because that's the thing, just because something is inexpensive does not mean it's a good value. I think something like getting a T3i today is a great example of that. Let's check ebay.com here. Let's go to eBay. Let's see, what does a Canon T3i go for right now? If I wanted to buy one, this is about $100. You can get one for $200 with the lens. This is not a great value proposition. I didn't even bother selling my camera, my T3i. I gave it to my friend Franny, who I do Natural One with. I didn't even bother selling it. It wasn't worth selling it. That's kind of a big thing is, like you, where are we? This is the wrong kit here. Let me get back to that, let me get back to that list, the proper list there. Here we go. All right. So these cameras are great values because you have features that are useful today. This can record in 4K 30 frames a second, which is very useful. You can't do it in 24, I think, but that's something that obviously becomes a weird, wonky thing that you may not need to worry about in the end. But you can record in 4K, which is something that can be very useful. Being able to kind of crop in, make a mistake every now and then, but fix it because things like warp stabilizer or just camera stabilizer in After Effects are going to be able to be more useful when you can crop in and not actually lose visual quality, or at least a lot of it. And then its 1080 performance allows you to go to 1080p 60 frames a second, so you can get some relatively decent slow-mo, not as much as the 720 120 frames a second on something like the M50, but I do think that in my opinion, for what and what you can inevitably do, like I said, is you can use something like the Viltrox adapter and get a lens like this. You can make this camera look amazing for under for what was originally an under $500 investment, for just the camera. That is amazingly versatile, and that's what I love about the Micro Four Thirds sensor, is the ability to get things like the speed boosters. And so now you don't have to worry about, if you feel like Micro Four Thirds lenses aren't going to be useful for you later on, if you definitely want to go on for full videographer video making, and you don't want to invest too much into these lenses, then, you can get something like this, which is an EF mount, which will be useful. Like this, I could slap this right onto a Canon C200 and make it look awesome. And that's the thing. Like, I have this, I can put this on my GH5, and I can put this on a Canon C200, and I could possibly make both of them look just about equally as good. Obviously, maybe despite if I was not using a log color profile and whatnot, or it's raw. Like, there are some things that are obviously going to be some qualifiers to that statement, but I'm just saying, no matter what, the lenses matter more than the camera body. So this is a great value because no matter what, you can get the better lenses and you can work with this body and get creating, and that's what's really important. Now, why have we dropped the Video Micro and we picked up this audio set here? And arguably, this maybe isn't even something that you absolutely need. There are some relatively cheap lavalier microphones that sure are not going, if you plug them right into the microphone jack, are they perfect? No. But what this will do is that this is giving you a solid value. And having a wireless system is just useful, even if it's not the best, because it will just force you to need to become a little better at, using, utilizing your editing software and learning how to edit audio, which is a tool for you that will help you in the future, especially in terms of video. Just if you need to learn how to live check audio, you'll kind of know what sounds good and what doesn't. So there are a lot of things that this comes with that are really useful that I want to talk about. So obviously you get a transmitter and a receiver. So that's these two things right here. And that's obviously useful for the fact that, this then, you can go anywhere. Like if you want to vlog with, a lot of vloggers use wireless sets, and it's because they have a great amount of use, because here, I'll grab mine. I didn't put everything on my desk, but I sure as hell put it on the floor next to my desk. Oh, the cord here is gone a little bit awry, but here, we'll unfurl it. So, I can have this, right inside of a jacket or under a shirt. This can essentially be around here depending on what I'm wearing, and this can just go right in my pocket, while the receiver here goes right on top of the camera, just sits there and is floating along with me wherever I'm going. And obviously these ones are a little worse. It can be really a little heavy. I bought this set for close to around $200, and that was, I don't know if this Kamika set actually was around then. But I have used Kamika ones before. I don't know if these ones, let me see if I can find the specs here. The one thing I didn't check, these aren't the Kamika, this isn't the exact Kamika set that I have used. We need to find power. That's what we want. We want some type of power battery type. So these use AA's. So they'll have a little bit of weight. These ones will have a little bit of weight to them, kind of like these Ceramonic ones that I use. So potentially you could use the Ceramonic system as well. I just kind of picked one that I think of a brand that I recognized and that it was around. That was just on the website as I was kind of looking around here. But let's almost knocked off the receiver. Luckily, again, because it's metal, wireless. Let's do that. All right, so boom. Let's see. So yeah, just above. So this is essentially the set I bought. Obviously, this was the EDU special. So potentially this could be more. This could be from a markup. Who knows? But what I do know is, like, for about the same price, I've got something that I would argue is about equal in quality between the two of them. So this one's a little less, which is good. Just saving money. And in this scenario, I think we're getting a slightly better value proposition because these, while with editing, there it goes again. While these ones are pretty good if you just edit them. Oh, by the way, here's the Ceramonic set. I forgot to switch over again. My bad. But these Kamikas will be just about as good. And they will obviously also give you the ability to go wireless, which is something that if you're trying to get into video, so you inevitably want to go professional, you want to have stuff that's going to inevitably help you for a long time and do a number of projects, this list is what's going to help you a lot more. And I'll put a link to this list in the description to both of these lists if you want to check them out. And you can obviously pick and choose whatever you think. Obviously, you don't have to buy everything at once. I'll actually organize these before this video comes out from top to bottom as the most important thing to buy to the least important things to buy. And probably that number 2, to be real, is going to be this. It is going to be lights. The Viltrox light, these newer lights. These lights are going to be indefinitely useful. Lighting is so important. We already talked about why with the Viltrox. It's just infinitely useful. And getting a full-on 2 LED light kit with, like, these are going to be strong lights. And what's nice about these newer kits is they come with like a little bit of a kind of a softy. I'll call it a soft plate instead of a soft box, but they're bicolor. You can soften the light a bit more. On Amazon, you can actually find a similar kit to this for cheaper. So that actually can even get you underneath that $1,000, a little bit closer to that, $1,000 marking, here. Like, you can find these these newer lights for about $140, so that's about $50 cheaper. You can possibly find a number of these things a little bit cheaper on Amazon. Who knows? Look around the market. We're using B&H here exclusively because it has a convenient listing system. That is the only reason. Otherwise, you could, like batteries, like I mentioned before, you could get on Amazon, you can get higher capacity batteries. So these are 2200 milliamp hour. I think you can get a like 6,000 milliamp hour battery for about the same price. Now, are they potentially a slightly lesser brand? Although there is a set from newer at about that price level, but arguably could they not hold as well of a charge as maybe something like an actual Sony battery or even these Draycasts? Because you can that's kind of one of those things that you'll experiment with. But the benefit is because they're so cheap compared to name brand batteries, you can buy large amounts of them, and despite that maybe they'll lose charges, as long as they're constantly being charged, you inevitably are able to you're going to be able to get through the shoot. And so that's the thing, is having the lighting though is so important because you have the ability to be able to see everything. And now, if one thing I didn't talk about was why did we get a tripod with this fluid head? You might be able to find some tripods for cheap, but they won't have something. It is called this fluid head. Why is that really important? And that's because you want to be able to, as a videographer, you want to be able to smoothly pan and tilt the camera, right? You want to be able, like, you don't want to have the jerky motion of, like, say you're using something with like a ball head, like a Joby Gorilla Pod, for example. The problem you're going to run into is that when you'll release the ball mount, and then it's just going to be like wobbling around. So you can't make it do like a really nice pan around, like really slow and steady. You're just going to get this like really jerky movement, and that's something that these fluid heads will provide you. Is the movement of panning and tilting that'll be really smooth. So that's something that the tripods are really important, and arguably maybe would be the second thing that you should get. But I would argue, in a way, in terms of true value proposition, it's interchangeable between the LED lights and this. But definitely that, and then number 4 would be this: getting audio. I would argue getting all those things above this lens. Above even this lens. Like here, let's organize this right now. So obviously number 1 is the camera, right? And then number 2, we'll put number 2 with the tripod, just because it'll help you out. But then number 3, we're going to put this light here. Then number 4, we're going to put this audio light. And so we're going to put these next to the lights here just because. So technically, while these are 4, they go in the same spot as the lights because you need the lights. So in terms of, this is how I would organize this list, honestly. And arguably, you could get this right away if you want. You could, if we want, here, let's bundle this with the camera. So we'll put it at 2, but these 2 things are linked, right? We're going to say that these 2 things are linked. So we've got number 1 is the camera. Obviously, you need the camera. That's the thing that's going to get you going. And more, not in a way that's a little better than your phone. Just a little more better, just better dynamic range, better stuff for, having depth of field, stuff like that. So then inevitably, obviously, I think you should get a semi-decent SDXC SD card. This one isn't bad by much means, but it's not going to be very useful in higher end, like 4K, when you're recording 4K and stuff like that. It's just not going to be as good. This will definitely just better, especially for $20. It's a throwaway in terms of getting equipment. Especially if you're sitting with that cool $1,000 tax refund or whatever, you've gotten money from your rich family member. Christmas list, things like that. Third, you should. We'll say third, the tripod, just because the benefit of the tripod is that you can put the camera down and you can get going. Arguably, it's less relevant to have the tripod if for interviews and stuff. If you can't get any good audio, and it's just going to be coming from the camera, never interview somebody with the camera audio. But arguably, maybe with an interview, you could play around with maybe getting something like this microphone and a cable that just goes right from, XLR to 3mm jack into the mic input here. So arguably, that's something that you could look into as if you don't want to put up this money. So that's kind of something that you can look into there. So number 4, these 2 are obviously, like we said, we're combining the newer bicolor lights. Just useful, like just get lighting, before you worry about doing like crazy good interviews. And honestly, even when you do the interviews, no one's going to care if it's not lit. You might be able to hear everything, but nobody's going to super care. Although arguably you could put this here, maybe that should be the case. But see, no matter what, I haven't backed down from having the last thing being the lights, right? Or being the lens. The lens is, to me, honestly, I would much rather anybody stick with the kit lens, get all of these things, and then get the nice lens. Now, if we were to continue this list, right, then I would say get the Viltrox adapter, then start getting EF lenses, or get something like the 12 to 35. That's a nice constant 2.8 aperture. The lens on this G7 is going to be variable, so it's going to be pretty, it's going to get pretty poor with the longer look, which is kind of not what you want. You want to be able to do stuff like convention and portrait style videography with a solid amount of depth of field and light. But the low light performance on the G7 is pretty good. It's actually better than the M50, the Canon M50, which is a little surprising because it's a bigger sensor. But it's there. So that's a big thing is, you get that constant aperture. Like I said, this is 3.5 to 5.6, but I would much rather anybody create more with that kit lens and then get things like lighting to improve their shots, get things like audio to improve their audio quality. And that's, again, this is for like if you want to do video long term. That's what this list is for. If you just want to do conventions, you go to this list. If you just want cons, you want to make some cool cosplay music videos, go to this list. We're going to put this all the way down. And then, we're going to get, we'll bundle the battery and the light up here. But then in that scenario, I would kind of argue then that maybe the lens does outweigh the tripod a little bit, right? Everything goes above the stabilizer. Get the stabilizer last. Just learn how to use some good handheld video, like learn how to use your hands, walk on your feet. Things I'm going to talk about in the second episode of Videographer's Guide to the Convention. But that's the thing. Like, learn how to use your feet. Don't use these as a crutch. Use them because you want to do something cool with them. You want to create a unique shot, but you don't want to spend a number $100 on a gimbal. So I have a couple tabs here open though, with obviously things that if you want some alternatives for certain things, if for our upgrade options in the future, these are a couple options. So we kind of went to it already. We have the Canon SL2. This is a very decent option for something that has, an EF mount. So you don't have to worry about any adapters. And then inevitably it does have about similar, I would argue, relatively similar specs as the M50. It only just doesn't have, it is only lacking in 4K, which is a downer for trying to learn how to use 4K. It's not, 4K is definitely not required in any way, and it's something that could just be looked at. We've talked about the A6400. It's a higher end, like this is a big ask for getting started, but man, this camera will literally stay in your bag forever. Like you could inevitably, like say 4 years down the road, you get the A7 VI or whatever, right? Like whatever one of those is out. This camera could still be in your bag as a B cam, right? While you have upgraded otherwise, this camera still has great amount of use because this has something that a lot of the other cameras don't. I believe this one does have image stabilization. Let's see, video, focus, viewfinder, monitor, flash, blah, blah, blah. Trying to see what's stable. No, this one does not. Okay, I thought this one did. Might be the A6600. That's my bad. So while this is lacking image stabilization, you are getting though a mount that is transferable for everything. Like you can get so much like Sony glass that can be used for so many things. Like you can get cinema lenses and put it onto this camera if you wanted to, for goodness sake. Honestly, having a mount that can be used for so many lenses is an amazing good feature. And while this is a really light camera, it packs a lot of great punch. But otherwise, I was going to get ahead of myself here. But otherwise, in terms of a lens, if you want an upgrade, so like say maybe you wanted to stick with Micro Four Thirds, and something that I would argue maybe strikes similar pounds with this, and right now it's on sale for seemingly a good amount, is this Leica 12 to 60. The reason being 24 to 120 as a zoom range is amazing, and having to drop down to f4 kind of sucks. Like especially this because it's 2.8 only at 24 millimeters. You get to about 40 millimeters, which is what I look at as one of the best ranges to film at, the best focal lengths to film at. The downside is at about 40 you're still at about 3.6 or so, or like 3.5. It's not that that part sucks, but no matter what, you're getting a lens though that has great visual clarity. Like this lens, in terms of visuals though, it's so amazingly sharp. It is. Let's just go to this. I don't get these stupid UV filters, please. They do nothing. But anyway, yeah. So this lens, you can get, a crazy amount of like great looks. This thing is a solid lens. It's nice quality. The Panasonic one is a great quality too. But you get, this one also has image stabilization, so it can be used on something that doesn't, like the G7, and it'll help create a little more stabilization. That's the thing, is if your camera doesn't have IS, that doesn't mean your lenses won't as well. So you inevitably could do that. This is something that could service you pretty well, honestly. Otherwise, then, if you wanted to get something like a gimbal, so I'm gonna talk more about these gimbals. But one thing that I didn't realize right away, and that I inevitably did realize as well, is that the Weebill S is actually becoming a seemingly pretty great option. Like this camera, or this gimbal, is a crazy value proposition. Like this can host huge lenses on it. I've seen, reviews of it so far where the lenses are like, where people have put really long lenses on this on heavy cameras. So this thing can go with you pretty far, especially the fact that the G7 and this lens, if anything, are both so light that you're going to get nowhere near the max payload, which is currently unlisted. But Zhiyun is a pretty good gimbal maker. I've had a gimbal from them in the past. They're decent. They're a very decent brand, for very much so. Their app for apps, not so amazing, especially on Android. But as a gimbal as a whole, when you don't really need the apps for gimbals, it's really not a thing. This is a great value proposition for being under $400. Like it's under $400, and you're getting a crazy great amount, like a crazy great gimbal for the size. Like this is a very small gimbal. It can fit in the side of a backpack. Like it is crazy good, for the price. So this is something I would recommend if you are looking for a gimbal. But again, I wouldn't focus on getting this right away. Get this because you want to do stuff that's really cool. You just want to further expand some creativity, but nothing will replace the creativity in your head. You're not going to suddenly do crazy shots because you have a gimbal, right? If you can't put it in your head to make the shots work, or to, expose them properly, to create, good focus, this isn't going to do it for you. This ain't it, chief. So get this if you really want to use it. I'm a little over time here, but that's fine. Also, currently there is this. I would, as I mentioned, I kind of pointed out earlier, I would argue it's maybe not the greatest value proposition, because I don't know about getting two lenses that are kind of iffy in terms of aperture stuff. But hey, it's two lenses for about the same price. I think for currently, actually, for $20 or for $50. So hey, it's there. We went over this earlier, but I just wanted to bring it up again. So that's it. This is kind of the two lists that I would really go over in terms of getting started and kind of why these are cameras you should get through. Now, in the future, I do plan to talk more about the upgrade path, why getting things like a speed booster can be really useful, and why Viltrox maybe isn't as bad as it may seem, despite that it does have a decent amount of complications, and maybe why you should stick with the Micro Four Thirds mount, because there are things in comparison, like the Z Cam and the Blackmagic, that I think create a weird proposition in terms of the higher end camera kind of thing. But how much of a value are they really to everybody? So you can check that out in the next episode, and that's it. I'm not great at outros apparently today. So long.